Welcome back to the
Gentleman's Dojo!
Boom! Oh my God, guys, we have made it to 100
There it is.
episodes of the Dojo.
I walked into the studio, balloons, confetti everywhere.
Yeah.
Felt good.
That's the Asian side of you that got us to 100.
We want to thank Bill Byrne, Al Madrigal, for giving us this great opportunity. It's been
Absolutely.
so much fun. All Things Comedy, our producer Aaron.
Gotta
I can't
thank
believe we're at
everybody.
100. By the way, Patrick, when did you join us? When did you jump in? What episode?
Probably about 98, 97, I don't know. No.
But Patrick has been a welcome add to our show.
Absolutely.
Steve and I started doing it solo. We realized maybe the show was jumping the shark a little bit, so we decided to bring in a cousin Oliver, which is our Patrick Keane.
Ted McGinley?
Yes, our Ted McGinley. So I got to tell you, it's hard to believe that we have been doing this almost 2 years. Absolutely crazy. So I'm excited. By the way, we have a great guest on today's show.
We couldn't be happier.
Oh, my gosh.
And more thrilled for our guest today.
And for the 100th episode, we have saved probably our biggest front loader for today. So we're excited. And by the way, not only do we have a great guest for today, Patrick, but some great guests on the horizon. We have, coming up in a couple of weeks, Robert O'Neill.
That's right.
Who wrote that great book about being the Navy SEAL.
His experience,
who shot Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
I heard him on the Howard Stern show. I was like, oh my gosh, we got to get this guy. So he's coming to do our show.
He's happy to do it, he said.
He's happy to
His
do it.
people said.
Brand new book out.
Yeah.
One of the guests that I'm excited about moving forward, Chris Hansen.
Chris Hansen will be good.
Chris Hansen.
We know him from previous. We both got caught up in him. We can't talk about it on air.
We know him from a previous joke of mine, and he's into a new season of a show called Crime Watch Daily, which is coming into its second season this fall.
Okay, well,
but
we got to welcome to the Dojo.
Episode number 100.
Number 100. It's a very special episode, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have our guest, Mr. Vince Vaughn, ladies and gentlemen.
There it is. Thank you for...
Very nice to be in the Dojo. You know, it's bigger than it sounds.
Yeah. No, thank you for making the drive.
It's very spacious in here.
But did you ever think...
Although I can tell it's somewhat combative, there's an air of respect and elegance and gentleman quality to the place.
Did you ever think as a kid, Vince, that this would be a career highlight for you coming into this show, a podcast that reaches tens of people?
Exist. There was no Gentleman's Dojo when I was a kid. There was just dojos.
Oh, I see.
So I didn't have the imagination to come up with this creative of a space to even know that this could be a possibility. Had I imagined the Gentleman's Dojo, yes, I would have realized that would be a highlight.
And we certainly know that you have a new movie coming out that you could go on Fallon and Colbert and promote, but why do that when we're going to push this thing to almost 4 listeners? There's no reason to fly to New York, Vince, when right here you're reaching as many people as you can.
You hadn't
That's
done
right.
enough for Steve.
Doing this less for promotional purposes and just to sort of visit with you guys.
There it is. I like it.
Well, Vince, thank you so much for calling in. Obviously, let's just talk right off the bat about your new film coming out. You have Brawl in Cell Block 99. The director, his name is Craig Zoller. Is that the right way of saying it?
Yeah, that's his name. He did that movie Bone Tomahawk, which was very cool.
A great.
And this is very similar. You know, it's very character driven, but then it has great action stuff, and it's very the violence in it is very, much more than you see in a traditional movie. So he puts together very cool films.
Yeah, it looks amazing, and the headline in Entertainment Weekly says Vince Vaughn as you've never seen him before, and you see the still, and you look like a badass. The poster, you look like a badass. There's a lot of violence in this. There's a lot of fighting in this. You've trained in the past as a boxer, and Craig is very complimentary in terms of saying, that you guys have had shots where you're going, 10, 15, 20 punches at a time in terms of choreographing it. How much did boxing, your past in boxing, play into an attribute in this film?
Well, it helped. I had always boxed a little younger, just would go down to train. And, back then we used to spar a lot just with other guys in the gym. We'd keep it under control, but still we didn't know anything about concussions. So I don't know how healthy it was every day to kind of be sparring. But it definitely helped me with this, that I was able to kind of, when you do these larger sequences are almost like dance routines, are very choreographed. And when you're doing it with kind of one camera or 2 cameras and you're kind of capturing everything at once, it's all sort of timing and stuff. So it was fun to do that, and I think it definitely gave me at least a foundation to be able to prepare for the character.
And how excited are you?
Let's get off of this subject, which has been a great subject, and let's talk about you, gentlemen. How is it to be here on the 100th episode?
Wow. Well, I mean, we're excited. We have some great guests lined up in the future. We've had some great guests in the past. Now, we know you're a fan. What's been your favorite episode of the Dojo?
There's so many.
Listen, I'm sure
To be
Vince...
honest with you, I haven't listened to enough of these to pick a favorite.
Listen,
but I'm glad, I think it's a feat that you two, I know how Gary, you like to rib Steve. I think it's a feat that you guys have lasted 100 episodes.
That is true.
I agree with that.
That is true.
Physical fight in the dojo.
That is true. I mean, because I will say, friends come up to me and they say, because you've known us, Vince, but friends will come up and say, when has Steve had enough? That he's just had enough of you jabbing and making fun of low ticket sales and this, that, and the other thing. And there was a moment a couple of months ago when Steve called me on a Monday, and I texted him a bunch of times, never wrote me back, and he finally called me. He said, "Can we talk?" And I was like, "Sure, what's going on?" And he's like, "We're going to be friends forever, but I got to tell you, in Ohio, you're being a big pain in the ass." And I was like, "I get it. Okay." So we know.
That's good. He communicated. He started off with a positive, saying that you'll always be friends.
Yes.
And then he gave you the issues. You guys are like a couple that's successfully gone through therapy. That's I'm glad to hear you're communicating that way.
I will say Sullivan and Son, which you and I met on, was the only show that I could ever do warm-up on and make fun of the cast as I was in the audience. No other show I could never be in the audience at Conan and be like, "Hey, look at that piece of shit." But yet I could do it at Sullivan and Son, and it was perfectly acceptable. Nobody cared. It was great.
Yes.
You couldn't do that at Dr. Ken?
That's right. That was sort of the climate.
I would assume, Vince, you're getting ready to train in these great boxing scenes. See how I transition back to your movie? You're getting ready to train, and I assume instead of putting on like a great Fiona Apple song, you put on one of the Dojo episodes. Is that possible?
It could be possible. I haven't thought about it. I might have to blast that in next time I do some training. Keep me pumped up, keep an acidic tone in the air. Make an atmosphere where I realize that no one's safe. That could really work.
You fought in several films now. What's the most physically taxing movie that you've done?
Physically taxing. This Brawl was pretty physically taxing. The last one, Hacksaw Ridge, was physically taxing to some degree, just because of all the gear and stuff and running around and the battle sequences and stuff. But it's all kind of fun, and ultimately, and it's always nice to be doing things that are different and not repeating the same stuff.
Yeah, what is
the most physical taxing episode you guys have done in the dojo? Is there any sort of routine of do you guys break it up like someone in a cubicle where you realize you got to walk a little bit and touch your toes? You guys just sugar the whole time you're talking in the dojo.
Vince, I got to ask you, because you're going back to back with this director, Craig Zoller. Your next film is Dragged Across the Concrete with Mel Gibson. What is it that, obviously you guys have a chemistry, there's a rapport there. What is it you appreciate about him as a filmmaker to go back to back? And not only that, to go with a director you just worked with Mel Gibson, to go from working on one side of the camera to the other side with him as well.
Well, it's so hard to find. I mean, Craig Zoller is very unique in that he was a novelist originally, wrote some great Western novels as well as some others. And he's had multiple careers. He was an animator. He was a cinematographer. He just doesn't cease to amaze you as far as the things that he's allowed himself to get interested in. And he kind of brings them all together. There's 2 original songs in Brawl in Cell Block 99 that he wrote.
Wow.
And he has the OJs, the band the OJs, perform the sones. He's also in a band. I mean, it starts to feel like the most interesting man in the world with Zoller. But he's a unique voice. What's interesting is he's written a lot of screenplays throughout the years, and he would never take notes. He just really kind of investigates things creatively and knows what he likes, and he would never compromise his screenplays in order to get them made. And so it made it challenging for him. I mean, he sat out for many years writing screenplays that sold, that were always on a thing called the Blacklist, that were like screenplays that were kind of well regarded in town that hadn't been made, and he just wouldn't take any notes or make any changes that he didn't believe in. And in fact, when they made the first Western, Bone Tomahawk, when I heard the budget, I couldn't believe it. This was a Western with horses and stuff, and they shot the movie for under $2 million in 21 days. And when I saw it, it was, very original filmmaking in that the guy allows a pace that's kind of lets you get to know characters. The acting's very subtle and understated. It's sort of a mashup of genres, and it's just all kind of becomes an original voice. So Brawl, when I read that script, was one of the best scripts I've read, and it's sort of, the movie has really good character and performance moments, and then it has this element where the fighting is sort of done almost kung fu style, although my character doesn't know kung fu, but the style of it is. It's got thriller and horror elements. He's just very unique, and so this Dragged Across Concrete's a really, really good script. This movie will be released by Lionsgate. The other movie, Brawl, as well as the Bone Tomahawk movie, they're longer than most movies, and I don't know that neither of them would probably get an R rating. Their violence is probably more extreme than that, so it's harder for those to get a traditional release. This one, Dragged, will be rated R, but I just find him to be, at a time where everything's a sequel or people are looking to, push quote-unquote an IP through the marketplace. He's really taking his time and telling character stories, so I find it very interesting and fun to be a part of it.
Excited to see it.
Vince, the 90s, when you got your start, the Swingers movies, the Kevin Smith movies, Wes Anderson, Damon and Affleck movies, like all these young careers where actors took it upon themselves to write, direct, produce their own project, everyone seemed to, you understood at a young age, wow, we need to take this upon ourselves. Was that a result of, frustration with not getting the jobs you wanted, not getting enough work, or did you guys just feel we can do better? What was the impetus for that?
Yeah, I guess, I think it's important to give yourself permission to create stuff. There's something in being an actor that you're sort of waiting and auditioning for other material. It's sort of the nature of it. But I think what happened was we felt that some of the material wasn't as, it's hard, I think sometimes it's people of that age who create stories that are sort of relevant for exactly what's going on versus people who might be some removed, not always, but it feels like if there's a voice of that age that you can kind of write to what's going on in the culture at that time. And you see it with stand-ups too, like right now, there's a lot of great stand-ups and they give themselves permission to write and to do and perform constantly, and it's sort of, I always like it if stand-ups, if they have ambition to sort of take it upon themselves to create their own, whether it's a television show or film or something. Because a lot of times people say, the stand-up's successful, people pay to watch them, let's plug them into a script or plug them into an idea. But sometimes there's something unorganic about trying to fit someone so unique, into something sort of general. A lot of times when the comedians themselves are involved in the actual screenplay and write to their voice, you'll have a higher success rate. I mean, Woody Allen was a stand-up, right? And he sort of created Annie Hall and tons of movies, but he had such an interesting point of view and perspective, and he was just using a different medium to write. So I think whenever it's always, I think, good for people to kind of create their own path, and nowadays I feel like it's so much easier just because the equipment, the ability to shoot things, it's a lot less expensive and more tangible.
Vince, would you consider Steve a great stand-up?
Gary?
I would.
Gary?
I would. I think Steve's really, I've always really been a fan of Steve. We put him on the Wild West thing. There's something very original just in his life experience, and the way that he grew up, and I think he speaks to that. So I think he definitely has original points of view on things, and you can't really peg him as far as putting him in a category. He sort of has opinions and ideas from different angles, so I like that. I think whenever you watch him, it's always surprising to see where he turns and where he goes.
Why do you think he can't sell tickets?
Gary? Okay, Vince, I got to ask you.
We can agree to disagree.
This has been 100 episodes. We can agree to disagree. 100 episodes of this shit. Jesus Christ.
Pretty good selling tickets.
I'm texting you right now from Ohio. Vince, you obviously started your career off with some really dramatic roles, and then you made the pivot, obviously, I think, because people saw what you did in Swingers, to being this great romantic comedic lead, and now you're making a pivot from True Detective to Hacksaw to Cell Block 99. Do you feel like your career's kind of coming full circle back to that serious dramatic actor?
I don't know if I would say that I'm. It's funny because when we did Swingers, it was comedic, but it was grounded. It's not a broad movie. And then Made was another one that we did that was kind of comedic and but not so broad. It was funny because when Old School came to me, Todd Phillips offered me Old School. I remember the studio. I hadn't done a lot of comedies. And they said, "Oh, we don't know if you can do comedy. It'd be funny."
That's crazy now.
Because I just hadn't done that much. I had done more kind of dramatic stuff or kind of independent stuff. So that was interesting for me to hear because I had, kind of started even doing improv and stuff younger. And then I think, I started doing these comedies and stuff and a lot of rated R comedies, which I enjoyed. Then it kind of shifted into things. But, I think sometimes you get, if something works or clicks, you kind of they want to keep putting you in that, and maybe you kind of get known for that, and then it's upon you to sort of try to expand that. I just got to a stage for me where I was much more excited to try different things. It doesn't mean I wouldn't go back and do something comedic if it was something I was excited about, but I'm at a stage where I have kids and a family, so I have to be really excited about a project, in order to want to go do it, and it's more just trying to do things that I'm more excited about. I feel like I got into a stage where I was kind of going and doing some of these movies, and I just wasn't as conscious. I was going into them, and I maybe wasn't having as high of a standard or as strong of a point of view creatively going in. Not that I wouldn't always do my best, and you'd be optimistic about the project, but I think I just have, developed into kind of higher standards and wanting to selfishly, try different things. Cell Block, I got to do something very different and got to work and have an accent and, things that I haven't done in a while. So I just am enjoying kind of trying to mix it up.
How many scripts are you presented in a month? I mean, how many do you get and see, and how many are great? How many are junk? I mean, what's kind of the thought?
I don't know. It just depends. Sometimes you get more scripts than others, but you try to give them a chance. I remember, you never know, like Brawl was something that came to me that wasn't overly on everyone's radar, and I had read it and just thought, this is terrific, and that's sort of what led me to seeing Bone Tomahawk. So you just never know when a good script or an interesting filmmaker is going to present itself.
Vince, you've had an enormous career. I mean, 2 decades now. And there's peaks and valleys, obviously. You've maintained relevance. But throughout the highs are always great, but I've always found that sometimes in failure or in those valleys, that's where you gain motivation in terms of moving towards that next project. What has failure taught you over the course of your career, and how do you apply it moving forward to the next project for yourself or continuing throughout the course of your career?
Gosh, as an actor, Steve, a stand-up or anything, all you guys know, most of it's failure, right? When you start, meaning you have to start to define failure and success, I think, differently. Mm-hmm. But as far as, most times you didn't get the parts, you'd audition, and you start off that way. It's very challenging. So I think you have to kind of define for yourself, it has to be about your own effort, right? Like knowing if you did the best you could, then you were successful. You could do something and have it work, but you really didn't, put your most into it. I don't know that that's successful. So I think it has to be defined. You start to learn that really success is, I think it's that John Wooden quote, the direct feeling you get knowing you did the best you could to be the best you could be at what you were doing. So, but as far as dealing with things that don't work or disappointments, you just have to keep moving forward. Hopefully you learn from those things, but sometimes those things are worth it if you're trying to do something that's not necessarily such a commercial shot. It depends on what you're attempting. Mm-hmm. Depends, if you're trying to do something that you're looking to sell a lot of tickets to, or if you're looking to do something that in your own mind you think is interesting or of value. So, but I think you always learn more when things don't go well. That's for sure, because it forces you to look at yourself or your process, I guess. And there's a delicate balance, right, of, even being a stand-up comedian, you got to look at it, but then you sort of have to have a short memory, too. Like, you can't, there's a balance between learning from it and then also moving on and expecting it to go well the next time. So you have to have a way to kind of look at stuff, but not overly dwell on it either.
Right.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of learning going on in stand-up with the failure. It's like a quarterback throwing a pick six. It's like you got to get right back on the horse. You know what I'm saying?
Right, because then you got to perform the next night or whatever. So you got to have a balance of an evaluation and analyzing stuff, but it can't be paralyzing.
Yeah.
Are you somebody, too, Vince, that likes to go to a movie that's opening that Friday and sit in the back with the audience and just kind of see what their reaction is to it?
You mean my own movies?
Yeah.
I don't watch my own movies that much. Once or twice. This Brawl I'll see a few times because we're going to some festivals, the Venice Film Festival in Toronto and a bunch of festivals, London, so that's always nice. So that's fun to go and be a part of that and watch it in a crowd that way. But once you've made a movie, you sort of, you spend so much time on it, you kind of, you watch it, and you don't really revisit it too much. I do like sometimes on opening night to go out and sit in the back with the audience in a crowd, drive around with some friends and kind of check it out. And with comedies, that's always fun because it's, such a reaction and laughter and stuff. So, but yeah, I may go early and sort of check it out with the crowd, but then I don't really revisit it.
What movie have you done that you've watched the most?
Boy, I don't know. I don't think I've seen any of them more than maybe 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Unless you like I said, you were going to festivals or things like that. But I don't really watch them all that much. I don't know, Steve. Do you guys watch your stand-up specials more than?
Well, nobody watches that stuff.
Gary.
Yeah, I mean,
Patrick had a question.
I have a feeling someone's going to get iced, and then we're going to have another phone call about how to treat each other. And this time the conversation's going to start off, we might be friends.
We might be friends forever.
And then the next time it's not looking like we're going to be friends.
It is.
Let's part company like gentlemen.
We have a working relationship. There's no friendship here.
It's funny, though. Stand-up is like when you're on stage alone suffering, it is like the scene in Return to Paradise where you're yelling at Joaquin going, you are not alone right now. Like, he's about to die, and, like, it's your buddy in the back, the only one laughing. And that's what it is. You narrated the 30 for 30 on the Bears, which was fantastic. Is that something they came to you with, or do you make your interests known?
Yeah, they came to us. We actually produced that movie as well, about the 85 Bears, and that Jason, the director, did a great job with that piece. That was fun. Obviously growing up in that area, that team was so important in my childhood, so it was nice to be a part of that.
It's incredible because Mike Ditka won 1, Jordan wins 6, but Ditka seems to be so Chicago, so much more than Jordan.
It's the better steakhouse, I think. Vince, when you're in the finish line,
I think Jordan's still such a part of the fabric, and as well too. I do think that team, though, that one year with the Bears, that was so many personalities. It was just such a unique season. There was just so much intrigue to those personalities between the Fridge and Peyton and McMahon. There was just so many personalities on that team.
How tough was it to crack the story on the 85 Bears? Because it's one thing to do a doc on them, but the angle that you guys took in producing it and then narrating it, it was amazing. It's one of the best 30 for 30s. I'm not just saying that.
Yeah, most of the credit really does go to the director, Jason, who really came up with the game plan on it. But I think the point of view was, you sort of went through this letter with Buddy, and you could see the bond that these players had underneath that, which is something that you hear about a lot. But I think you got to really see the investment that they had in each other, which was really moving.
I got to ask you, this is the last question, Vince, and I think this might get a little personal, but I think we should air it out here.
Okay.
Pittsburgh Penguins have won 3 cups. The Blackhawks have won 3 cups. I'm a Pittsburgh guy. You're a Chicago guy. Pittsburgh did win the cup back-to-back, and they have gotten the finals one more time. They did lose it, so they've gotten to the big dance 4 times. They won it 3 times. I would say on paper that the Pens are the better team in terms of this generation of players with Taves and Kane, that tandem, and Crosby and Malkin, Pittsburgh's tandem. What do you say?
Well, I think it's fair to say you might be a little biased. I mean, aren't you like on commercials for the NHL doing the Roger Rabbit or the Penguin or something to the Penguins?
Vince, I take the work I can get. Okay,
Steve's not on
well,
any
I
TV.
like it, but I'm just saying. I think it says maybe you. I mean, you're literally like dancing as if you're in the Mickey Mouse Club when the Penguins win the cup. So I think you might be somewhat biased. But I think they both have done a great job, both organizations. I think what's interesting is that the Blackhawks have been fairly consistent. I think the Penguins won their first cup before the Hawks won theirs. Mm-hmm. And the Hawks have been kind of consistent throughout, where the Penguins sort of won one and then has gone through a couple coaches since then. And what's more interesting, I think, now is with this new coach, they've won two, and they've won it back-to-back. So I think if you were to look over that time span, you'd have to say the Hawks have been, more consistent, same coach, same core. Kessel's a new ad, which really made a difference. I mean, I think the Canadian press is always a little more biased in favor of Canadian players. Not that they're not great, but I think sometimes guys like Kessel, who is obviously just a clutch player and just performs, I don't know that he always gets his due as much as he deserved. But I think if you look at the Pittsburgh team right now and over the last 2 years, you'd have to say that these last 2 years, obviously they've dominated it, but it's sort of a newer group, a newer organization with, different chemistry. They had a Genla for a while they brought in, and they were sort of wandering a little bit after that first cup. So I think they are really in a great place now. But I think the Hawks have been, from the time they've won until this stage, they've really been consistent. They've always been there, and they've never gone too easily, except this last year with Nashville, and Nashville turned out obviously to go to the finals. But the Hawks have been pretty consistent. But they've both done well. But I think it's harder to evaluate them because, like I said, Pittsburgh sort of was off the map after that first win for a good 4 or 5 years until they kind of got reorganized. Fair.
Well, fair. I think that's the dream scenario. I'd love to see these two end up in the finals, but it is the 100th episode. We cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your day to call in and hang out with us. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be with you gentlemen there in the dojo.
Yes.
I wish you guys another 100.
By the way,
I hope the friendship can stay intact. Counting
Vince,
on it.
Did you really see Steve in a rabbit commercial? Like, I'm fascinated because Steve probably does stuff for public access that we don't even know about.
Okay, Gary.
Well, what it was is I remember watching an NHL playoff game and they were talking about how fans go crazy and love the NHL, and then there was my friend Stephen Joseph Byrne and the Penguins jersey doing the running man.
Oh, okay.
That's what happened.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Celebrating the fact that the Penguins had won a game.
Non-union.
Gary would consider that a credit, but for me, it's...
I think that was a non-union gig. I don't think Steve got paid.
Okay. Vince, thank you.
Did you not see that, Gary?
I didn't. No.
Gary doesn't have. Gary can't afford cable.
I can't afford.
Everyone's got something to look up now.
No, I can't watch Steve on TV.
Gary, thank you so much, Vince.
So let me ask you guys a question.
Sure.
What is your goals for the next 100 episodes?
Oh wow, what do we want to do, huh?
Friendship, camaraderie.
Yeah.
Just the spirit of knowing that somebody's got your back. As I look at Gary, and I really hope that Gary at some point ends up on Conan O'Brien show. At some point, on a late night talk show.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it is funny, Vince, because as much as we jab each other, the minute we're alone and it's just the two of us, we do become this very romantic, like I could be talking to Steve and, be making fun of him hard. And then the minute everybody walks away, I'll be like, I'm really looking forward to doing Tampa next weekend with you. I love you, buddy.
Well, in our generation, that was always a sign of a friend you could trust, someone who would make fun of you and make fun of you publicly. So,
yes.
That's true.
It feels like the foundation is intact.
We all love each other.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you, Vince.
I wish you continued success.
Thank you so much.
And we're excited about your movie coming out next month.
Can't wait. Take care, pal. Vince Vaughn, ladies and gentlemen.
Episode number 100. There it is.
The 100th episode of the Dojo. By the way, as cool as it gets.
It's so great, and I think Patrick has already lined up somebody for episode number 200, Carson Palmer. So we're excited to get that guy come 2019.
Couldn't be a greater way to ring in the 100th episode.
Yeah.
Not only just a great guy, but literally like a national treasure. I mean, you go out with that guy anywhere, and people just instantly love him.
So recognizable.
All those iconic films, and that's a guy you could have on I think, for 2 or 3 hours and just ask him until you bleed the rock dry. But what a
Do you
great
think
dude.
the breakup is the fan favorite amongst women? That's got to be his movie, The Breakup.
It might be. I mean, he and Aniston had great on camera.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic movie.
I got to tell you, though, like, as Swingers is like the movie I think we
supreme,
all kind of grew up watching, like, that's it. That you want to go out with that
I mean,
that
who
group
had
of guys.
doubts about Vince doing comedy when they were doing Old School? I mean, he had done
Yeah.
Swingers at that point. It's like that's one of the top comedies of the 90s,
But there are comedy clubs that have doubts that Steve can do comedy.
Okay.
So what was I saying?
Made is the film. Made is the film you got to go back and watch. Because I remember watching
yeah.
Made, and I was like, man, he's just kind of like, he's so grating on Favreau after seeing Swingers. And I think you go into it with these expectations of it being like Swingers. And if you go at it just knowing it's a completely different film, it's fucking hilarious. And I think Made is as funny, if not funnier, than Swingers, knowing,
Oh, wow. Strong
given
statement.
it a few years after seeing Swingers,
Absolutely.
But we got to thank Vince Vaughn for calling in.
Yep.
The
glad I set that
100th
up.
episode of the Gentleman's Dojo. Now, where can they find you online, Gary?
Well, they can find me at Canon Comedy. There you go.
Okay. And Keen?
At Citizen Keen. And on YouTube as well at Keen of Comedy.
Let me just say this. We are so thankful that Patrick has jumped into the dojo. He's filled this third seat nicely. We did open auditions for months trying to find somebody to fill this chair.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anybody. This is the guy we picked. His life changed forever at that point.
As a
So
black lesbian, it was good to be brought in here to fill a quota.
we are so happy to have you.
Yeah.
He
He's
looks
added-
like he just got divorced and she took everything, doesn't he?
When
I've
he
never
asked-
seen him with the 5 o'clock shadow and the hair disheveled.
I knew Patrick was our choice for the third chair when he asked Jonathan Allen if Hillary Clinton declared her candidacy on SNL. That's when I knew. Here's a man that does not do research.
By the way, a great episode. That was a
Jonathan
great
Allen,
episode.
Yes.
That was great.
Author of Shattered,
Yeah.
Yes.
the story of the Hillary Clinton campaign. We've had a number of great episodes, and we cannot thank you guys for listening. Please go to iTunes, rate us, review us, let us know what you think of the show. These next 100 episodes, we've convened. We promise we're going to get you a better dojo than ever before. These next 100 are going to be great. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to Vince Vaughn. Thanks to all our past guests. Gary, what has been your favorite episode of the 100?
Wow. I got to tell you, I mean, it's crazy. I know this one probably won't stick out a lot, but I really enjoyed talking to the creator of Yar's Revenge.
Yeah,
Howard
Atari
Rorschach.
Game Over.
Yeah, because I love
It was
that
a great
movie.
doc.
Growing up, loving Atari. I mean, that was one of my maybe top 5, 10 favorites. We've had so many great ones.
How about you, Keen?
I like the guy we brought in who directs presently not The Big Bang Theory.
Mark
He-
Sandrowski.
That
he's
was a great
fantastic.
one.
Great
energy.
interview.
Yeah.
I got to say,
mechanic.
off the top of my head, your mom calling in, probably my favorite one.
The first one.
I would say Peter Billingsley because he's such a great friend, and then obviously getting to 100 and having Vince Vaughn on. I think Vince is probably my favorite.
But by the way, I'm sure if we go back and look at some of the ones we've done, we would have forgotten some of the, just because we've done so many. You forget that, this one was great, this one was great. There
Gene
were really-
Kelly's widow, Patricia Kelly, she was fantastic. What a great episode
Phil
that was.
Lewis was great.
Phil Lewis, great television director and actor himself.
We
but-
had Dick Gregory and Jerry Lewis scheduled for
Done.
this month.
What a shame.
But, yeah.
Yeah.
didn't happen.
Well-
Great time to talk about death.
The Gentleman's Dojo, 100 episodes. Gary, it's been a pleasure working with
Thank
you
you,
all.
Steven.
100. Keen, we are so glad to have you on board. Thank you all for listening. Rate us, review us, follow us. Thank you so much.